Hello and welcome to Converse-ations.
Haha!
Okay. Today we're discussing Winnie the Pooh. I'm sure some of you have heard of this character.
Hopefully.
He's the donkey.
What? Winnie the Pooh is in fact a bear, and he is a bear of very little brain.
How did he get that name? Why does he have two names? Why is he
Why does
Winnie
he
the
have
Pooh?
two names? Well, he's named for two different animals. Only one of which is a bear.
What's the other?
A swan.
Named Pooh.
Yes.
Where does the come from? Which animal was the?
It just made sense in the flow. So when children name things, they don't always make a lot of sense. So Christopher Robin had a toy, and he named his toy after two characters, or two animals. Pooh was a swan that lived on the lake, and Winnie was a bear that had fought in World War I with the Canadian government, because Canada's weird. So he's a combination of both of those names, but that has nothing to do with his personality. That's literally just like where the name came from. A. Milne was writing poems, many of which were about his son, so his son's teddy bear showed up. The teddy bear seemed to be received rather well, and the teddy bear continued and took on a life of his own.
Now the biggest issue with this is that they as in A. Milne and E.H. Shepard, did not change the name of the character for Christopher Robin. It was named after him, and then the books got really popular, so then the real person, Christopher Robin, got really popular and did not like it at all.
Yeah, it's kind of hard.
Very uncomfortable.
When a parent signs you up for something that you had no input on.
So from that point on, everyone should take the lesson of you can use inspiration, that's totally fine, but do not use a real person's name unless it's a biography.
Yes. Do you know when Winnie the Pooh made his literary debut? What is his internationally recognized birthday?
Something 1926.
Yes, October 14th, 1926.
I did a show with Winnie the Pooh.
Yes, we did. We did a show in 2016 for the 90th anniversary of Winnie the Pooh. There was a lot of things that happened for his 90th. They also released a new book, mostly in the UK.
It's about the Queen, right?
Yes, that's where Winnie the Pooh went to meet the Queen. They wanted to do something that was distinctly British and very different from anything that Disney had done with the character. Pooh is one of those odd characters who exists both on his own and as a Disney version. There are two separate Poohs. They are still very similar, especially at their core, but there are definitely things about Book Pooh that didn't totally translate over to Disney Pooh. Book Pooh likes to come up with a lot of poems, where Movie Pooh sings a few random songs.
And then eats honey. A lot.
Well,
excessively.
Yes. But Cottlestone Pie is this entire long poem that Pooh recites in the book that did not make it through to any of the adaptations. Who knows? Pooh is not the only character to live in the 100-Acre Wood. There are characters Christopher Robin, and Piglet, and Tigger, and Eeyore, and Kanga, and Roo, which were all of those characters were based on plush toys, whereas the characters of Owl and Rabbit were based on, believe it or not, actual animals.
Are there real animals in a forest? Where's Gopher?
Gopher is a Disney edition, which is noted in his first appearance. He says, "I'm not in the book, but here's my card." So they didn't even try to go with subtle by writing in a random character for no reason. Sometimes when Disney adds a character, it's seamless, and sometimes it's not. When you look at the adaptation of Alice in Wonderland, they added a single character, and no one who is, unless you're very familiar with the books, you don't realize the character was added.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
The doorknob.
Oh.
That is a Disney-only edition, but fits so well within the theme and the universe that it's just not even, nobody's mad. Gopher kind of, some people like him, some people don't, kind of in this weird in-between phase.
I think Gopher's fun.
I enjoy Gopher. What's interesting about when Disney adapted it and brought it to the world at large is it lost some of its Britishness in that they don't all have British accents. Winnie the Pooh was originally voiced by Sterling Holloway, Disney voice actor extraordinaire who also voiced characters like the Cheshire Cat and Kaa in the Jungle Book. And when I hear those characters, they just sound like creepy Pooh Bear to me.
Yeah.
I remember the first time my mom was watching a movie on Turner Classic Movies, and she was like, look at that guy, look at that guy. And I was like, okay, who is this? This is a game we played all the time. And she was like, that's Pooh Bear. And I was like, are you lying to me right now?
And he started talking.
He sounded pretty normal talking, too. He puts on a character voice for Pooh, and she's like, it's Sterling Holloway. And I was like, okay, what kind of name is that? Like, Tigger was originally voiced by Paul Winchell.
Yep.
And those are the only two names that I know off the top of my head. I know those names very, very well, though. Now they are both played by the same person. Jim Cummings is the voice of both Winnie the Pooh and Tigger.
And every other animated character in
Pretty
the world.
much. He is one of the most prolific voice actors currently working. His body of work is absolutely spectacular. Once you get good at spotting his voice or recognizing his voice, it's a really fun game to play. You'll be watching something and go, oh, is that Jim? It's Jim.
Disney has gone on to create further adaptations of Winnie the Pooh, mainly on television. There have been several movies that have been straight to video and DVD and Blu-ray, and a few that have gone into a theatrical release.
Yes, the Tigger movie was a theatrical release.
Yes.
It was my little sister's first movie in theaters. The next one we saw as a family was Star Trek in 2009. That's how well our experience went with the Tigger movie and my very young sister being a little too excited for Dad's tastes.
As far as television series adaptations, you have Welcome to Pooh Corner, which uses creepy, I don't even know what to call them, mascot type characters.
Wikipedia called them full body puppets.
Full body puppets. They were creepy. And creepy.
Yep.
Then Disney said, maybe we shouldn't do that anymore. So then they went and created The New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, which is an animated series, which is what I remember distinctly. It's still one of my favorite shows growing up.
The New Adventures or The Many Adventures?
It's Many Adventures is the movie.
Okay.
The New Adventures is the television series. They went and adapted, they adapted a couple more of the book poems and stories, but it was mostly newly created stories for the television series. Some of them are distinctly, when I think of this thing, I think of like 3 or 4 episodes. One of them is in the Wild West where they're having an ice cream fight with ice cream scoops. The weird thing about that was Christopher Robin talked like he was from America, and I was like, I'm sorry, do you know who this is? Like, why is this happening?
That had one of the catchiest theme songs.
It did.
I can still sing that by heart. There was an arc of episodes about Kessie the baby bluebird.
Kessie.
Which is how we discovered my sister had a fear of falling. Every time she was learning to fly, and every time she dipped, my sister freaked.
It's funny.
So then when she came back around on the next series, which was
The Book of Pooh.
The Book of Pooh.
I don't think there was anything in between that. I think Pooh took a long time off of TV.
Yeah. Book of Pooh came back as it was a Japanese style of puppetry with virtual reality backgrounds that were animated basically in real time, giving it a much faster production time than most shows, whether animated or live action or puppetry. It really incorporated a lot of different elements. It's a film style that has almost exclusively been used for children's television. When you look at the patenting for that process, it's almost exclusively children's programs for whatever reason. But there are other programs that have done it as well. Bear in the Big Blue House used it for some of their segments as well. That's how they did all the shadow stuff.
I like that they try to do something very different with the Pooh characters. Yeah. I think each time they do an interpretation, they're like, well, what can we do different this time? Which is why the next adaptation of Winnie the Pooh went in the CGI route and the let's talk to everyone like they're stupid route, like every other children's television show. And the show was titled My Friends Tigger and Pooh. Christopher Robin makes 1 or 2 appearances throughout the series, and that is it. And it's weird, and Darby's okay, but
Who named that child?
I don't know. I think what the issue was is that they realized there are a lot of male characters on the show, and they needed a female character to balance it out.
Part of the balancing was the fact that most people I know assumed Piglet was a girl while growing up.
Yep.
High voice and pink. most people just flat assumed Piglet was female.
Kessie is a girl, yes.
Kessie is a girl, yes, but was only in a few episodes of New Adventures, and then Book of Pooh, and was never seen again.
Yeah, which is so irritating because I love Kessie.
Yeah. Who was voiced by Stephanie DeBrusso.
Yes.
From Avenue Q for the entire Book of Pooh run.
And we really haven't seen Pooh on the television very much since. Pooh has made several movie appearances recently. The 2011 full-length animated film Winnie the Pooh, which pulled further stories from the Milne series and some of them that were already adapted into the television series, which is why when I first watched it, I was like, I don't understand why we're retelling some of these stories, and I think a lot of it happened in this series that nobody remembers. People remember it, but they don't remember the specific stories.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, okay, so the episode where the segment where Tigger is trying to teach Eeyore how to be Tigger is an episode of the series, and I was like, why are we redoing this episode? It was fun, and it kept with the tone of the original movie and the original series.
That was the first one that had a different sound musically. The Sherman Brothers wrote a lot of the original music, and all of the other adaptations kind of stuck to the Sherman Brothers sound, whether or not they went with the original music or they added their own compositions that sounded very similar, whereas this...
I think New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh did its own thing. It very much stuck with a similar tone.
Well, and that's
but it was
what I mean,
definitely
like,
more upbeat, definitely more late 80s and early 90s.
But it didn't stray super far from the Sherman feel, whereas the music in this latest Winnie the Pooh theatrical release, it was the songwriting team that did Frozen, and a billion other credits.
Finding Nemo.
The musical in the parks. So that gave it more of a Broadway and show tune style feel to it, whereas the Sherman Brothers songs, which are all very sweet, are small. Sherman Brothers songs just feel small and cozy,
but
which worked.
There was only, as far as I remember, one. It was the Honey song that went on for a full length extended period of time.
The Baxon song.
I mean, yeah.
It's not a long movie overall, so those numbers stand out.
Well, the Baxon song in length matches what Heffalumps and Woozles was, so...
Yeah.
Pooh has had some live-action interpretations recently as well. Goodbye Christopher Robin came out, and that told the story of Pooh's creation. Obviously, being a movie, they're going to take some liberties in adjusting the plot and the timeline a little bit. Christopher Robin got Pooh in the movie when he was like 5 or 6, which, because kid actors. In real life, he got Winnie the Pooh when he was 1, I believe. Because it was a 99 and 100, yes. I watched it on a plane going, oh, this is on here. I guess I should watch this now. And then ugly cried on the plane the entire ride to where I don't even remember where I was going. It was not only a great story adaptation and really got into the life of an author and got into the life of this legacy of this literary character, but it was also really well filmed, and I am such a geek when it comes to beautiful film angles and color juxtaposition and all of that kind of stuff. It was very artsy.
Now, Goodbye Christopher Robin was not a Disney production.
No, 20th Century Fox, I think, distributed it. I don't know.
Then you have the Disney Christopher Robin. The differentiation is the word goodbye. The Disney Christopher Robin, in which Christopher Robin, the fictional character, has grown up, and then the Pooh characters come back to remind him that there's a child inside. To me, it felt very much like Hook, but with Winnie the Pooh instead of Peter Pan, and I loved it, and I ate up every second of it, and I thought it worked really, really well.
I mean, honestly, they didn't do anything outrageously new or groundbreaking with it, but it turned out to be, I think, the best Disney live-action movie that's come out. I love
Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
I've loved him for a long time. I liked the visual styling that they went with for the movie. It felt very akin to, like, Chronicles of Narnia.
Yeah. It felt very British.
It felt very British. And then the way that they animated Pooh worked
the plushes,
really nicely.
Because when the trailer first came out, I was like, I don't know if I like these. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're a little weird, but once they were in the context of the film, it worked very well. And
Yeah.
you saw them all together, and
And they gave Eeyore the sass he deserved. When you go back and you read the original material, Eeyore is so sassy.
Well, I think all of the characters, while they kept to the Disney tradition with the clothing and the style, they really went back and dove into the Milne stories and pulled more tone material from that. So you got, I think, the best balance of the two is in this movie. I think this movie does a lot of things really well.
Totally. This is, hear me out, because I just grabbed two different thoughts from two different points.
I do not promise to hear anything.
So A. Milne wrote all of this post-World War I. And when you look at the humor styles that cycle through, the post-World War I generation has a very similar humor tone and style to what is currently popular with the younger generation today. And it has to do with a lot of the juxtapositions and a lot of the social things that are going on. So when you go back and you read the original Milne things, it feels very contemporary and it feels very relevant, and it's because our society, which moves in cycles, has cycled back around to a very similar point.
And then which is why Tumblr posts like newspaper articles from like 1910 and all that, and 1920 and 1930, is because those types of things are becoming more relevant again.
And Milne, when you read the original book, Milne does a lot of interesting things with punctuation and capitalizations. There was a lot of it that was expressed through the written word in a way that you don't usually see used, that is very similar to internet speak and to the way things are typed in such a way that when you read it, you know exactly the tone of voice and exactly the pacing and emphasis that the author wants you to have. Where most books rely on filler words or rely on just, hopefully you'll get the tone I was going for, whereas like a capital here and then a like tiny word here, like it's a very visual way of writing out what is being said.
I'm surprised that Disney went that route with it, but it works so well for it. It just, I don't think it would have worked for any of their other films, which are all based on books. You usually, with the princess movies, they'll start with an open book and they'll end with closing the book, but the rest of it will be animated. They will really play it up like this is taking place inside a book. I
think it's because the book was written so stylistically, like the printing was set on the page so stylistically. And at that point, you know, it had been around for 40 years. People were familiar with the printing of the book, whereas you have stories like, you know, Cinderella, where we're familiar with 20 different, you know, translations and 30 different printings. Nobody agrees on this is exactly the way the words appeared on the page. Whereas with Pooh, these are the way the words appear on the page. And it is just as critical to the adaptation as the words themselves.
Do you have a favorite story from Winnie the Pooh? Whether it's book, Disney adaptation, not you, them.
Oh.
I don't care what yours is.
I was going to say building Eeyore's house.
Yeah, because Eeyore's house kept falling down during the library program.
Well, also, I've seen so many people that are like, look, I'm helpful! And they do something really destructive. And then they're like, but look, I was helpful! And you're like, you created a problem and then sort of fixed it. That's not helpful. Like, points for trying? I guess.
There's an episode of the TV series of New Adventures. I think he lends Pooh a balloon. Pooh lends it to somebody else, and somebody else lends it to somebody else, and Pooh comes back to get it, and throughout the course of everything, the balloon pops.
Oh no!
And then they all try to replace the balloon. Like, Piglet, like, inflates his shirt and, like, or paints himself or something like that, and it's like, I'm the balloon. And then at the end, Pooh goes up to Christopher Robin and goes, Christopher Robin, I broke your balloon. He goes, it's not broken, because he's American. And then he inflates it again. And then all the animals start to float, you know, because that's what oxygen does.
Cool.
So, fun fact, Christopher Robin breathes helium. That's what I learned from that television series. It's great. Because I tried to do that, and I was like, well, my air is dumb. This is what I learned as a kid. My air is dumb. Thanks for watching. Make sure you like this video.
Share this video.
Subscribe to our channel.
Press that notifications button.
Like us on Facebook.
Follow us on Instagram.
And find us on other things. What's another thing?
Patreon.
Patreones. On Patreon, there's a bunch of other videos. I stay up until the wee hours of the morning making and editing these videos.
Yep.
Especially the ones for Patreon, because there's exclusive web series stuff. And Eric has voices and doesn't know which one to do when he's exhausted all the time.
Pretty much.
So in order to provide you guys with better content, we can hire more people with your money,
Money,
please.
please.
Thank you. I don't know what this is. I'm like grabbing like with a claw, like the pickle claw.